my name is Dubé. I am from Toronto proper, and I'm the editor-in-chief at the Eyeopener here at Ryerson.
What is the Eyeopener, and what's your role in the organization?
So the Eyeopener is Ryerson's independent student newspaper. There's a couple other papers, but we're the ones that really are just funded directly by the students, not really from the university. And our mandate is pretty much to make sure that we're educating our own editors and putting out stories that are of interest to the rest of the school body. And so as editor-in-chief, my role is to make sure that all of the other editors are doing their jobs, making sure that everything's running smoothly. If there's any major problems, that's kind of like my job. It's basically just like corralling other people and making sure that they're putting out stories and just kind of like adding like a good focus to what we're doing.
And in terms of the way that your paper is set up, what are the different roles and how do those roles interact?
I guess the easiest way to put it is that we have like three categories of editors. We have section editors proper, which are the people that run our different sections. So like we have an arts and life section, a community section, like that kind of stuff. And so they're in charge of putting out stories. They're in charge of like curating the actual content that we're making. And then on the other side, we have our more visual editors. So we have a 3-person photo team and a 3-person media team. And so they focus on what kind of like images we put out and what kind of photos and illustrations. And then we have our online editors that are kind of running the website, making sure that's all good. A few years ago, they completely redesigned our site, so that was really fun to do. And they also control our social accounts and basically anything on the back end, as well as digitizing our paper itself into like an online archive.
And what makes the Eyeopener successful?
I think that when we're the most successful is not when we just put out one good story, but when we put out a story that gets people engaged, that they then come to us with other stories and it kind of snowballs from there. We try and make sure that what we're writing about is things that people are interested in, but at the same time, we're following up on things that we know are working for that year. And we're making sure that we're listening to what people are actually interested in hearing about.
What advice do you have for editors of high school publications who may be struggling to manage their teams and may be struggling to navigate that position as an editor?
A lot of the time, what could seem like someone not being invested or someone not being interested is actually just them either not knowing where to start or kind of not feeling comfortable in the whole situation. They can kind of freak out and either not do it because they're freaking out, or maybe not do as good of a job, or maybe not communicate as well. So I'd definitely say like a huge part of that is just speaking to them, knowing what they're comfortable with, and making sure that they know what you're expecting, and it's never as scary as they think it is in their heads, especially for like a first story.
What organizational problems have you encountered, and how have you overcome some of these obstacles?
It's hard to keep people involved. It was really about just making sure that all of the experiences they have were positive, or when they weren't, we were at least like properly working through with them to like hopefully get them to stay and keep working with us.
So how did you engage content creators and writers who were in that situation and were struggling to really commit to the organization? And what techniques did you use in that regard?
I don't think it's that too much to ask to be like, okay, just for this 1 week, dedicate a few hours a day just to do this one story. It's, I need you to work on something for the next like few days, and then that's it. And if you want to do it again, you can, as opposed to like one huge commitment over the course of the whole semester. So you really do have to be much more understanding than if they were like a freelancer that you were paying in some way.
What do you do to foster individual relationships between your contributors?
You have to think of it in the way that one editor is specifically working with 3 people. So I think the fact that we are branching it out that way is like probably the best way to just make sure that everyone's kind of feeling heard and feeling like they're actually making a difference with everything. And the other thing too is that on Tuesdays, as soon as we go to print, we all just go down to the campus pub, we invite all of our volunteers, we pay for their food and their drinks, and that's almost like our thank you to them. Like we go and we're like, hey, we really liked your story this week, and we really like make sure that they're heard and it's not just something that comes out into the void that we didn't really care about. And we found that the more people go to that, the more invested they get, and the more likely they are to run for us in the future and like get really involved with the paper. So I felt like that was a really good way to kind of personalize it a little bit.
Where do you go to find story ideas on a school campus?
We found that Google Alerts is crazy good for that. You just basically go on Google, you look something up, and then if you scroll down, it'll give you the option to get notified every time something new that adheres to your search comes up. So we put like Ryerson in money, like Ryerson in politics, RSU, our student union, and that kind of stuff. So like we get notified every time anything comes out about that, so we're always in the loop. Last year we opened an encrypted tip line online, and so people could anonymously send us tip info about things that might be a little bit more sensitive. So that was also like a big momentum thing, was that the more investigations we put out, the more investigations we were getting, or more tips we were getting.
Ryerson is such a diverse school. You have so many different students from so many different backgrounds. So what do you do to make sure that the Eyeopener is reflective of your student population?
We've been hosting an equity training, and the way that that's panned out is that now when we think about representation, especially within our masthead and who we're writing about and who we're like shooting photos of, like that is always the first thing on our minds, is that, is this reflective of like, the campus? Are we just getting the people that we personally are like comfortable approaching? That can happen a lot, especially with new volunteers. They're not really thinking in that mindset, so we almost have to like approach them and be like, hey, you took all these photos, everyone's white, that's not really Ryerson, that's not really like representative of anything. I think a big part about writing equitably is also admitting to your mistakes in an equitable manner, acknowledging when you do something wrong, and listening to the groups that you might have written about in a light that was like less than favorable accidentally, and like acknowledging that you did something wrong and striving to fix it and publicly fixing it is also really important.
How do you navigate the constant evolution of roles in your newspaper, and how do you deal with that constant transition?
There's been a couple years where everyone on the masthead has been there for years. Because they're feeling so comfortable with it, they're not pushing themselves as well as they could. So I actually love it when there's that turnaround and that a new kind of fresh voice gets in, because immediately it's like you have these new perspectives, you have someone that is really keen and that's really keen to learn and get better. So there's like a very natural like change of the guard that happens with it.